Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtiki. So, continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, ninth chapter, the passing away of Bhishmadev in the presence of Lord Krishna. Text number 34 onwards. Yudhi Turga Rajo Vidhumra Vishva Kach Lulit Shram Vare Lankritasye Mamnishita Sharer Vividyamana Tvachi Vilasat Kavache Astu Krishna Atma. On the battlefield, where Shri Krishna attended Arjun out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. So beautiful picture of Krishna that Bhishmadev had in his mind of the battlefield. Krishna, although he is the Supreme Lord himself, but when he was in the battlefield, he had to act like a charioteer. And this really intensified the mood of Bhishmadev. And Prabhupada wrote a nice purport. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the five principal relations, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, that is neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, filial affection, and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Shri Bhishmadev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relationship of servitorship. So he is in Dasaras. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. So this is a peculiar, very particular relationship between Krishna and Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev was shooting arrows at Arjun, and side by side he shot some arrows at Krishna also. But Krishna took those arrows because Bhishmadev was throwing out of devotion, not out of enmity. He took those arrows as if the other devotees throw roses at him. So that is love of Krishna for his devotee. Can we imagine this kind of relationship mentioned in any other scripture in the world? I mean, can we imagine if in Islam somebody says, "Oh, I shot arrows at Allah," or in Christianity somebody says, "Oh, I shot arrows, I threw stones at God, and I love him, he loves me. Out of love I threw him." They will kill him right away. The person just says that, not even forget about doing it. And here Bhishmadev really shot arrows at Krishna. We'll see in the purport further. He really shot arrows. And he's considered one of the Mahajans, one of the biggest devotees of the Lord. So this is because the Vedic text depicts love of Krishna, bhakti, in a very high way, in a high manner that is not even understandable by other people. They can't even understand this kind of relationship. Just because they cannot understand, they cannot conceive of it, they cannot perceive it, they say, "Oh, it's all mythology. They're all just stories, they don't make sense." It doesn't make sense to them. But the people who are in devotional service or who are in some relationship with the Lord, they can very well understand, not just understand, they appreciate it, they relish it. And look at the purport Prabhupada writing. It appears that Bhishmadev is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. His body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. That is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So also it is stated in the Skanda Purana. It is said that their spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed. When Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encased, just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers, who are always alert to kill the Lord, even from the very beginning of his appearance. So Krishna appears, he looks like just like one of us, just like one of the conditioned souls, just to bewilder the atheists, the people who don't have faith in him, to bewilder them more. Because here Krishna, in the shloka it is said that Krishna was he was having some sweat on his face, and in the purport Prabhupada writes further. Therefore, Bhishmadev's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees or liberated souls, they are not at all bewildered. Bhishma appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord because he did not leave Arjuna alone, although he was disturbed by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev. Nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though he was ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, what he writes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love with the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is already in the Madhurya Ras. Remarks very saliently in this regard. He says that the wounds created on the body of the Lord, so Krishna's body was pierced by the arrows of Bhishmadev. He was not only sweating, but he was bleeding also. Why was he bleeding? He has a spiritual body. Body is made of Sat, Chit and Ananda. So where's the blood coming from? So this blood, actually, it is explained, Krishna's body has no blood. But he was showing this blood to enhance the feelings of Bhishmadev. Because if a warrior is shooting an arrow at somebody else and that person's body does not get wounded, does not get pierced, it doesn't hurt him, apparently, so it will not give pleasure to the warrior who's shooting the arrows. So to give pleasure to Bhishmadev, Krishna was showing as if blood was coming out of his body. So this pleased Bhishmadev. And Bhishmadev was happy, Krishna was more happy. This is a different rasa, this is a different relationship between the Lord and the devotee. Just like in Damodar Leela, when Yashoda Maya was trying to bind up Krishna, nobody can bind up Lord. But Krishna let her bind him up. And then Krishna was crying because this was enhancing the Vatsalya mood. And that time, Yashoda Maya was in Vatsalya mood, but in the secondary mood of anger also. So Krishna wanted to heighten that mood and wanted to relish that mood of Yashoda Maya. So similarly here, Bhishmadev was in chivalry mood, in the Dasya mood, but secondary mood was chivalry of fighting. So Krishna wanted to heighten that mood. He says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the body of the Lord, directed by a strong sense of sex desire. So this was as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the body of the Lord, directed by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there is a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee, Shri Bhishmadev, was not at all mundane. Besides that, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharpened arrows are misleading to the common man. But one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds created by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev. So this is the mood of Krishna and Bhishma. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishmadev, and because Bhishmadev is a devotee in chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition, and that was the form of Krishna that Bhishmadev was remembering at his own deathbed. So it wasn't considered an offense. Bhishmadev didn't commit an offense by shooting arrows at Krishna. Of course, we cannot do that. That tomorrow we take up a bow and arrow and go to Radha Parsarthi temple and start shooting arrows at Parsarthi. We cannot do that. That will be an offense. We are not in that mood at all. Bhishmadev was. Text 35. Sapadi sakhi vacho nishamya madhye nij paryor balyo ratham nibeshya sthitwati par sainikayu rakshana hritvati partha sake ratir mamastu. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. So Bhishmadev can only remember the battle of Mahabharata and when Krishna was with Arjuna and Bhishmadev was on the opposite side. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out at all important men on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be, but out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of a small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees. And Bhishmadev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as a friend of Arjuna. So this is why Krishna carried out the orders of Arjuna, because he loved his devotees. The Lord diminished the duration of the life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. So even his killing of the opposite party, enemies of Arjuna, was his mercy. Actually, Krishna is nothing but mercy. He is made of nothing but mercy. Everything is mercy. He cannot do anything except mercy. Even if he kills people, that's his mercy. He kills asuras, that's his mercy. Because by killing them, he sends them back to the spiritual world. So everything he does is his mercy, actually. It is said that all the fighters who are assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. He was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. So that is Krishna. He is absolute. all good at all times. It just, we have to understand, we have to realize his activities, which are always good for everybody. Because we cannot understand, that's our shortcoming, not Krishna's shortcoming. Vyavahit pritna mukham niriksha svajanam vadad vimakhasya dosha buddhya kumatim harad atma vidyaya sharanarati parmasya tasya me astu. When Arjun was seemingly polluted by ignorance on observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Now, Vishnudeva is talking about when Lord spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. He gave him the message of Bhagavad Gita and made him to fight again, to do his duty again. So apparently Arjuna's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma-vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. So that's why this Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and that's why Arjuna was put into bewilderment. Swanigam maphaya mat pratigyam amrit madhi kartum vapluto rathastha dhritaratha charano abhya Yachaladgur Harir Iv Hantum Ibham Gato Tariya. Fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. So this is one of the beautiful paintings that ISKCON devotees have made when Krishna is running towards Bhishmadev with the wheel of the chariot in his hand, and Arjuna is running behind Krishna to stop him from breaking his vow. But Krishna did take up the wheel of the chariot. He broke his vow to fulfill Bhishma's vow and to protect Arjuna. Actually, that day Bhishma had taken a vow that he will kill Arjuna. Either Krishna has to break his vow and take up the weapon, or he will kill him, or Bhishma will kill Arjuna. And that day Bhishma fought so valiantly, so strongly, that Krishna could not protect Arjuna. So ultimately he had to get down from the chariot, break his vow, pick up the wheel, and when Bhishma saw Krishna picking up the wheel and running towards him, Bhishmadev even let go of his bow and arrow, and he was kind of welcoming Krishna, come and kill me. But Arjun ran behind, Arjun ran after Krishna and stopped him. He said, no, you don't break your vow, I'll fight more strongly now. The battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Duryodhan criticized Bhishmadev. So one night it happened. Duryodhan criticized Bhishmadev, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishmadev therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjun took the arrows from Duryodhana. And Bhishmadev could understand that this was a trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise his friend Arjun would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishmadev fought so violently that both Arjun and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and he would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjun, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishmadev in an angry mood as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishmadev at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of that day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjun was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjun's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishmadev wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created this situation, making Arjun's death imminent. He stood before Vishnudev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he or Krishna had taken up the wheel. So that's how much he loves his devotees. And in fact, this picture of Krishna that is described in this shloka, it was seen only by Vishnudev because Arjun was behind Krishna. Arjun could not see Krishna's face at that time. Only Vishnudev saw Krishna's face. He was angry. His face was full of ashes, he was perspiring, he was wounded, and he had dropped his outer cloth, the upper cloth, and he had the wheel in his hand to kill Bhishma. And Bhishma is remembering that picture, that mood of Krishna. And he is actually relishing that mood. And that's the love between devotee and the Lord. And this is what makes this relationship so special. So it's already 2 minutes over, so I'll stop here, see anybody has any questions or comments. So no questions? So we'll stop here. Yeah, you all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.